Welcome, Divya. I feel very happy to host you
Thank you,
as we
ma'am.
commemorate the birth anniversary of Sri F.C. Kohli by celebrating his life through research and innovation. So, this session is particularly special because we are going through the research journey of our alumni. Just now, Ishan finished his. So, Ishan, I think, graduated around the time Divya stepped into Triple IT campus. So I know Divya since 2012 when she appeared for the CLD interview. And of course, she was in my human values group as also. So at that time, we will hear from Divya's words, her own human values experience, because we had it very different. We used to have our sessions in the farmhouse on Triple IT campus. We were not enclosed in the classrooms. These are actually the plants that their batch had planted. They are still there, and they did lots of farming and all that. First, I will ask Divya to introduce herself in her own words. So, Divya, tell us about yourself, your story, where you are currently.
So, good evening, everyone. First of all, thanks, Radhika ma'am, and also thank you to Plati Hyderabad for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences and learnings at Triple IT H. And also, hi, Kishore sir, and hi, Pijan sir. It has been lovely seeing you both after such a long time. I don't know if you both remember me, but my data structures classes and my graphics classes just came back to me. And PJ sir's humor is just evergreen. The way he pulls his students like it's just evergreen. Coming up back to what I do currently, right? So I am an NLP data scientist at Shell Technology Center based in Bangalore. So in a sentence or two, what me and my team we do is we try to do a lot of research and experiments and come up with this data-driven solutions that are explicitly tailored towards solving certain business problems, sometimes using some basic, sometimes advanced analytical skills, statistical skills, and programming. So we built small prototypes to show the feasibility that a certain technology or certain methodology would work very well and would solve a certain business problem.
That's nice. So, NLP data scientist. So, let us start how it all started, your journey in NLP and computational linguistics.
So the moment somebody mentions Triple IT Hyderabad, it just takes me back to the interview day that you have just mentioned, Meet. And I remember the phase, of the competitive exams. Like this was during 2012, right? Of AIEEE, IIT JEE, and all of that. And my dad just accidentally stumbled upon Triple IT Hyderabad's website, and then he told me about this computational linguistics dual degree program. And the first thing that caught my eye was how peculiar, unconventional, in interdisciplinary program this was. And to add to my happiness, right? So once I cleared the exam that was there for CLD, there was an interview, and this interview was like one of the best experiences of my life, I have to say, where I remember like you, Deepthi ma'am, PJ sir, and even Kamal sir. And I remember Deepthi ma'am and Kamal sir asked me a question on what do you think is computational linguistics, right? So back then, I really didn't have a deep understanding of what this is, but I also remember the answer I gave them, right, in just one phrase. I told them that it's the way that we make computers understand our language, and that's where it all began, right? And something that I very fondly remember and carry with me till today that Triple IT has given me is that as a dual degree student, right? So research is something that is introduced very early on in the curriculum, like to be precise in the first semester of third year, right, where we are introduced, where we are, so in the curriculum itself, there are electives, like you can pick up honors projects or independent studies, right? So when I was doing all these things, somehow there was this structured thinking, right, that got into me, like I slowly started developing this structured thinking, how to come up, how to even identify a research problem, how to come up with the solutions, how to communicate with my mentors, right? And also, apart from that, another thing was accountability. like you're accountable for your independent study from the beginning to the end. These are the two things, like conducting your own research at a very young age, right? So these two things I still carry with me till date, and I just give all the credit to Triple IT and the environment that it has provided me with.
Just sharing with the students here, normally we encourage students to focus on one research topic and continue for next 2 years, like third year and fourth year, and that will translate into their MS problem. But Divya gave me jitters. Every semester she wanted to explore a new topic. Divya, would you like to focus on that?
Yeah.
Just share your experience, those 4 semesters of honors projects.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I still remember that day when you were slightly worried that I would lose my focus and, I wouldn't finish my degree forever. And I was like, I was very passionate. I would go to ma'am and I would say, I want to do this, I want to do that. I want to do everything under the sun. But then, yeah, of course, like ma'am expressed her concern, but she never imposed, any kind of pressure on me to work under a certain topic. So my first research summer, I worked at Anusarika, the rule-based machine translation lab that we have at Triple IT, right? I spent a summer there. Then again, I worked with Professor Shoma on distributional semantics. Then the next semester, I went back to Radhika saying, ma'am, I want to work with you on sentiment analysis. Then I started working there. That is when I met another senior of mine who was working on code mixing at that point of time, right? Code mixing is a language phenomenon that occurs typically in bilingual or multilingual societies where we mix two different languages and yet make a meaningful conversation. So I started working on that. So I used to help her with these by taking a little bit of a data and starting analyzing all of that. Not to forget, right? So another thing which is very impressive at Triple IT is in the research environment, along with the best mentors that you get as your advisors, you also get to work with your senior researchers, be it PhD students or let's say if I was in third year or fourth year MS students, dual degree students or MS students, from where you actually learn some practical hands-on research practices from them, and that's like your foundation on how to do research. So after working with my senior Kovida, we worked for about a couple of semesters on code mixing, and then we had a publication on that. And fairly at that point, I was convinced that I was able to work for 2 semesters on this project, on this topic. So I might, develop more interest and continue to work on this. But then again, like ma'am said, I was not satisfied. I continued to explore further. And I think this was in fourth year, second semester. I started to search about what are the topics the other world-class research labs are doing in NLP, in the field of NLP, natural language processing. And I used to watch a lot of TED Talks, read a lot of articles, follow a lot of authors. So that is when I came across Professor Justine Castle, who is then a professor at Language Technologies Institute, Carnegie Mellon University. So I just, out of the blue, I wrote an email to her saying, I read a lot about your work and it's very interesting. This is very interesting for me. And is there a chance? I was just asking her very casually if there's a chance for a potential internship or a discussion, like for the starters. She replied back. And yeah, I mean, back then, like I was very proud that maybe it was just my work that made her reply back. But then she scheduled an interview call and I explained what I was doing. And also I gave a summary of what we at LTRC were doing. And she was extremely impressed. And another thing was she already knew what LTRC was and what is the work that we were doing at LTRC, which I was completely unaware of, right? So I knew that I had a good environment around me, but I did not know that researchers and professors at world-class labs like LTI would recognize us, right? So I was extremely happy. And then, yeah, so after the discussion, she offered me a paid summer internship at LTI, at Language Technologies Institute. I went to CMU that summer, and yeah, so there I happened to work with people from different backgrounds, right? Like behavioral scientists, UI experts, and not not just people from computer science background, just like people who had linguistics as their main forte. So I worked on a dialogue system, and I worked on the intention recognition part of the dialogue system. And for so they were developing a conversational artificial intelligent assistant. And then while I was working on that, suddenly, I had these thoughts on, because I had the experience of code mixing before. And in general, when there is a dialogue between, let's say, me and my family members, or me and my friends who share languages, right? Like, let's say English and Hindi, or English and or Telugu. So we often tend to mix these things and have a dialogue, which is the most common form of conversation. I was thinking, like, what happens to the complexity of the intention recognition system when a phenomenon like code mixing unfolds? So with all these ideas in my head, I just came back to Radhika ma'am, and I was like, so this is what I think. So I think ma'am by that time would have thought, okay, no, she got a new topic. I don't know. I don't know what she must be doing this time. But then that was like my final topic for the thesis, where I was analyzing code mixing data in dialogue system, in a dialogue environment.
So I remember we've been working in dialogue systems earlier, and then with Divya's work, we took up code mix data, that to English Telugu code mix data, and her paper Ni Intention Enti. The whole code mix dialogue modeling that we thought so many years back, and now with ChatGPT, everything has taken a multi-million fold, I think. But one thing that I remember was when Divya came back from CMU, the way she looked at LTRC, the way she looked at triple IT faculty, that all changed. We were not the same people for her. That I can say. She was like, oh, the world knows LTRC better than LTRC students knows LTRC. Let me ask you one question. So the exploration, everything was fine to develop you as a research scholar. Once you graduate and step out into the real world, do you think triple IT prepared you well enough to take up your first job?
So I was a research engineer in a company, in an R&D company. Went there as an intern. And they were also working on chatbots and developing virtual assistants then. And because I was an intern, right? So though it was very different from academic research, the foundations that I had were like quite strong. And I was able to like work very well in that environment. But then I think to answer your question, ma'am, the challenges part, especially, I have to give you a little bit of a context, right? Right now, I am in the 5th year of my corporate career. And when I took up my first job, I was all excited and job was pretty good for a few months. But then suddenly I realized that I was not doing any data science. I was not doing any NLP or any research. So a work that came for a very short period of time began to become a very long-term it began to become a job for me. Like what I was essentially doing was I was devising some technical solutions, coming up with some technical solutions. I would like to, that's a very big term to say, but I would like to call them as hacks, right? To clean and represent data. That was exactly what I was doing. And it got very, very manual and monotonic for me. But then at that point of time, I knew that I had to ask, give me a different project that I would be interested in, right? And at that point of time, I faced like two challenges, one after the other. Number one is that I knew that I had to communicate that, this is not what you have hired me for, and this is not my work. It's okay to do it for a short term, but this has become my daily job, right? But then something stopped me. I was so scared that people would look at me as a complaining individual, and I somehow thought that this would hamper my professional growth, which actually never happened at Triple ID, right? So, like, if there is a project that we do not like, right, we just come to the guide and we explain everything. There were no such apprehensions. But then, however, I took a stand and I communicated it to my manager saying, see, this is not what I want to do. But then what I did is I did not ask for an immediate shift. but I asked him to give me the complete ownership of the current project that I'm working on. And I thought I would exhibit my capabilities and skills there, and then I will have a very good, argument, a very good base for the argument that I can do. I did all that. I finished my responsibilities very well. That is when the second challenge happened, and I was not acknowledged, number one. And I was, in a very nice words, I was put into the same project nicely, like I was like, you're doing this well, please be in this project, right? So at that point of time, right, when people did not acknowledge what I was doing, my self confidence came down massively. That was a very big challenge for me at around 2020, right? But still, then I thought, okay, I have fought enough. Let me just look for other opportunities. And then I looked for other opportunities at a very underconfident phase. And I think that is again something that Triple IT taught me, where in the research, right, there are many times where you get stuck, but you just don't leave it, right? You gain that perseverance and you just keep going, whatever it is. So I applied for a new job now, the one that I'm currently working in, right, at Shell. But then I entered into this job as a very underconfident person. I completely lost my self-confidence, I must say. So these two were like big challenges for me. And since I spoke about, how I lost my self-confidence, I also want to tell about how I started gaining it back. I'm still in that process, right? So I mainly tried doing three things, ma'am. Number one is I consciously took up roles that I thought, I was definitely interested in those roles, but in the back of my mind, I always thought that I was not experienced enough to take up a role like that. But while I did that, I had a lot of fear, and but I just faked the confidence. I just constantly upskilled myself. I was successful.
There's a question from PJN sir. When are you starting your PhD?
When am I starting my PhD?
Yes.
I'm thinking of it, sir. I'm thinking of it. I'll soon have a discussion with you.
Yeah, we just had a discussion on that. I would like to share with the audience that Divya also writes articles on empowerment of women and not to take anything, just put your foot down when you are in an uncomfortable position. So, Divya, would you like to share any message with women students here?
Not a message, probably for me, like why from a personal side, right? Why I write about empowerment is, number one is I always felt the encouragement that I received from Triple IT, right? The mentors and like advisors, co-guides, friends, the carefully built infrastructure, right? All of that was a main reason for me to take a stand. And even when there are challenges, right, to push myself through those challenges. So that was like a backbone for me, right? And whenever I write, I feel whenever people read these things, right, so they know that not everybody. So whenever I write about my vulnerabilities, so I write like personal stories and how I face them and all of that. So whenever people read these things, they, like, especially women students, right, when they read these things, they know that it's not about being gifted, but all of us go through some phases in their life that we need to pass. And that kind of a small push is required, is what I feel. And that is why I put up all these stories and I write about women's empowerment. And another thing that I wanted to say to women is, generally, on a very broad note, is that do not hesitate or explore to apply to a new role, or take up something new. You may never know, right? You may never know what you're capable of. Like Ishan was just mentioning when he was having this discussion, right? You may never know what you're good at, right? You don't have to stick to what you're already doing. So just explore as much as you can. And another thing that I felt outside when I came into the corporate world, which I never felt at Triple IT, fortunately, is that people will make you feel that you have got things very easy. Though intentional or unintentional, some people will make you feel that way. Don't let those words or those vibes stop you from doing what you're doing. Just keep going, keep swimming. That's what I say.
Any message to dual degree students, especially CLT students?
I think for dual degree students, right, like I said, since they are being introduced to this research from a very young age, from the third semester itself, right, there is a lot of possibility for them to lose their focus or lose interest in the problem statement that they are working on, right? Though they might be very passionate in the beginning, somehow I see a lot of students losing that interest. It might be because of the peer pressure and their classmates or batchmates leaving the campus for a very well-paying job, etc. All these can be reasons. And something that personally helped me is to have a regular connects or communications one-on-ones with your advisor, and also somebody who's doing a PhD in your lab, right? Like constant discussions, like, and you're involved in discussions like this, right? Because you are only looking at the world in one way. But when you have a discussion with your professor or advisor, they will help you to see what are the good consequences of finishing your research on time, being very focused, right? And then you can always work, right? You can always go out and work. The early message, ma'am.
That was wonderful, Divya. Thank you so much.
Fine.
She's on LinkedIn. Students can be connected with her. Thank
Sure,
you.
definitely. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.